Hi BookTube, hi! Welcome back. I'm Shelly Swearingen, and this is my BookTube channel. Today I am back at my home in South Carolina. I just got back a couple of days ago. I'm actually filming this on August 1st. So we traveled on the 29th and 30th overnight, and it's been a long couple of days, but I'm super glad to be home because I'm doing the Jane Austen at home tag. I was tagged by Elizabeth from Bouquets and Books. I actually spent the whole month dedicating myself and my reading to Jane Austen. She is an author that in the past I actually haven't been the biggest fan of. I did a whole video about it, but the brief recap is that I have a long history with Jane Austen. I know about her work. I've had friends who liked her, but I myself haven't been the biggest fan, mostly because I feel like I'm missing something or that she's over my head. So this month I decided to jump headfirst into her work and her life, and today I'm doing the Jane Austen at home tag. And actually this week I'm going to be wrapping up all of my Jane Austen reading and how the month went, but I thought I'd start with the tag. So yeah, let's get into it and stay with me. Okay, start by tagging someone who is participating in Jane Austen July. Well, considering that Jane Austen July is over because we are in August, I am not going to tag anybody. I'm just going to say that if you haven't done the Jane Austen at home tag and if you would like to, consider yourself tagged. And please do this tag. So let's get started with the questions. I have my computer right here, so if I look down, that's what I'm doing. All right, Mansfield Park. This is prompt number 1. Mansfield Park. The grandeur of the house astonished, but could not console her. Name a grand book that may or may not have been difficult to read. So the grand book that I thought of, that I have on my shelf, I get a lot of books from the library, is Infinite Jest. This has popped up on my channel before. I read Infinite Jest alongside my husband several years ago now. It is a chunky book written by David Foster Wallace. It has all of these footnotes in the back. And so often, and there's a ton of them, and they're very tangential, and David Foster Wallace is an extremely tangential writer, so this was a very difficult book to read. I'm so glad I read it alongside my husband because, you know, we were able to talk about the difficulties together and what we understood of the text. And yeah, so I know this is not to everybody's taste. It is a very in your head kind of book, or rather you're in David Foster Wallace's head, and it's about tennis and drugs and a family that is a mess, the incandenza family, and sports and fame. It's about a bunch of things, and it's not really meant to make sense. It's meant to sort of make your head scratch. And yeah, I really liked it, but it wasn't the most easy read. It was actually quite difficult. Prompt 2, Barton Cottage. In comparison of Norland, it was poor and small indeed. Name a book about a household in difficult circumstances. This definitely goes to, I had quite a few to choose from, but I was thinking of A Tree Grows in Brooklyn by Betty Smith. This book has popped up on my channel before, but it mostly follows the Norland family through the generations, but mostly focusing on Francie, her brother Neely, and her mother and father Johnny and Katie. And they are extremely poor, and the book focuses on how they find happiness and, you know, these moments of sweetness among their difficult livelihood, and about their poverty in Brooklyn, New York, and making money and making their money stretch and making their money work. And it's really just a fantastic book, but with family relationships that are complex and beautiful. But really, this book is about the family and their difficulties and growing up extremely poor and in an extremely poor neighborhood where nobody has access to wealth. And so I loved this book. I read it last year. It was one of my favorite reads last year. Just a fantastic, phenomenal read. Top 3, Hartfield. I believe few married women are half as much mistress of their husband's house as I am of Hartfield. Name a book that you feel entirely the mistress of. Okay, so that would be Wild by Cheryl Strayed. Wild is Cheryl Strayed's memoir of a portion of her life in her 20s when she decides to hike the Pacific Crest Trail. The Pacific Crest Trail is a trail that is on the west side of the United States. It goes from Mexico to Canada, and it crosses 3 states, so that would be California, Oregon, and Washington, and she hikes a good portion of it, and it's mostly about that and working through the grief of her mother's death, Cheryl had lost her mother a few years before. I feel the master of this because I reread this whenever I need an escape. I love to pretend that I am hiking the Pacific Crest Trail and that my toes are the ones that are blistering and that I'm going through every day in nature. And I've reread it probably 3 or 4 times. It's one of those books that I have revisited again and again when, you know, when I need something to kind of cheer me up and when I need to get out of my head. Yeah, I love that book. Okay, prompt 4, Fullerton. Now there was nothing so charming to her imagination as the unpretending comfort of a well-connected parsonage, something like Fullerton. Name a book containing a contented family. Okay, so that would be Wonder by R.J. Palacio. Wonder is about the story of Augie. He was born with a disease that distorts his face, and so he actually lives in a very, his family decides to put him in more of a sheltered life. So he's homeschooled up until he goes to, I believe it's 5th grade, or like a middle school setting. And that's when he first goes to school. But his family really structures themselves around Augie and his challenges as a person who looks different than the rest of society, and they love him so much, and they're so supportive of him that it's touching beyond belief. And I actually had to really kind of dig through my reading lists and my backlogs because there's not many books about a well-contented family. Just saying. Prompt 5. Rosings Park. He declared he might almost have supposed himself in the small summer breakfast parlor at Rosings, a comparison that did not at first convey much gratification. Name a book that other books are constantly being compared to. That would be To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee is constantly a book that other books are being compared to. The book is about Scout and her family, really. They live in Macomb County in Alabama here in the United States. They are not the most well off, and Macomb County has its own issues of race and poverty and just sort of small-mindedness. And it's just a fantastic book. The reason why lots of books get compared to it is, well, one, To Kill a Mockingbird is very well known, but if books are about racial justice, the courtroom, and if the courtroom case has anything to do with racial justice, Southern Gothic, if the book is Southern Gothic, then I feel like the blurbs on the back are constantly comparing it to Kill a Mockingbird. And that kind of annoys me because a lot of times I think To Kill a Mockingbird, when I read it, it's about a young girl who is looking back in her memory and thinking about the formative years of her life and those moments that really change. And one moment in particular, or one epic scene in particular, not scene, one epic event rather in particular that, that she is reflecting on. And to me, the book is very, very distinct and very unique. But if the book has any of those themes, you know, poverty, race, courtroom cases, and the way that we think about one another, then I believe that the book is just often slotted as like, it's like To Kill a Mockingbird, and I often disagree when I read books that are supposed to be like To Kill a Mockingbird. I find that they're not. My opinion, obviously. All right, prompt 6, HMS Loop the Asp. Quite worn out and broken up, I was the last man who commanded her. Show us a book that is looking the worse for wear. Okay, so my book of A Tree Grows in Brooklyn, I taped the spine on, the cover back on because the cover came off. And the back cover is missing. The little bits right here are coming off, and I believe the spine is also cracked, which that doesn't really bother me. I bought this very, very worn out and very brittle. So when I was opening it, the front and back cover popped off. Now, I have no idea what happened to the back cover, but yes, this even right here, I taped it in to give it a little life. And yeah, I don't know. Sad little A Tree Grows in Brooklyn, but it's all right. I still love it anyways, and I plan on keeping it around for a long, long time. Prompt 7, Northanger Abbey. An abbey, yes, it was delightful to be really in an abbey, but she doubted as she looked around the room whether anything within her observation would have given her the consciousness. Name a book that wasn't as creepy or dramatic that you thought it would be. Okay, y'all, I'm gonna admit something. I am not the biggest Stephen King fan, and so it was Salem's Lot. I read Salem's Lot a few years ago, and it was good. It was fine. It wasn't very scary though, and I really thought Stephen King's books would be really, really scary, but alas, it wasn't. And I've read a couple of Stephen King books, and I have to say that I'm not a fan. Just putting it out there. Prompt 8, Portsmouth. The smallness of the house and thinness of the walls brought everything so close to her that, added to the fatigue of her journey and all her recent agitation, she hardly knew how to bear it. Name a book that disappointed you when you revisited it. So that would be 13 Reasons Why by Jay Asher. I read 13 Reasons Why a long time ago, and I really loved it. It's the story, it tells you right away, pretty much immediately. It's about the story of a young girl who commits suicide, and she puts together a package of audio tapes before she died. She records herself and her story, and then that package of audio tapes gets sent to all of the people involved that contributed to her depression and her story, and she is able to share her story from there. I was enamored with it years ago because it was sort of gritty, and it talked about suicide and depression and sexual assault and the cruelty of the world really openly, and at the time I really liked that. Now I like books with a little more nuance, a little more well-roundedness. I read it in a graduate class, and at the time I was excited to read it again, and then when I did, I was actually really disappointed. Not to say that it was a bad book, it's a fine book, but it's definitely more for the young adult audience, which is not me anymore, quite frankly. So yeah, 13 Reasons Why by Jay Asher. Prompt 9, Kelly Lynch Hall. Principal seat, Kelly Lynch Hall in the county of Somerset. Name a book from your ancestral home. So that would be, I am a quarter Japanese. My grandmother is actually from Japan, and my dad was raised with a mother who had immigrated from Japan to the United States, and then a father who has had, many generations in the United States. So I was thinking about Japan and my love for that country and for their customs. I've actually been once when I was a little girl, and so I thought of Kafka on the Shore, which is by Haruko Murakami, and I read this in college. remember very little about it. I opt to revisit it, or probably it's about time to revisit it. I actually have 3 Haruko Murakami books, and this is the only one that I've read. And yeah, I can't tell you much about it. I know it's very dreamlike and very cerebral. There is a scene with a cat in it that is quite violent. So if you don't like violence against animals, I don't know if I would recommend this book for you. So yeah, Haruko Murakami's Kafka on the Shore. Okay, question 10. Pemberley. They all now entered a beautiful walk by the side of the water, and every step was bringing forward a nobler fall of ground. Name a book that you are ready to dive into. And that would be, oh, I didn't bring it over, but that would be Wolf Hall by Hilary Mantel. I talked about this book and a bunch of people say they want to read it. I just am so excited to jump into that book, and I really want to get to it pretty soon here. So yeah, Wolf Hall. So bonus question. I gotta actually look it up. Okay, bonus question. Which of these households would you like to live in? I would actually say none, because the home that I was the most interested in this month was actually Jane Austen's home in Steventon, because she loved it so much. It's out in the country. She had an affinity with it, which I liked, but what I loved was all of the life that came out of the house. So Jane Austen, with all of her siblings, grew up there. Her family ran a school for boys there, which only brought more life. There was parties, and there was a farm and the parsonage, and I have just this vivid picture of Steventon in my mind that I would love to live there. Just this quiet, quaint, little you know, area that's out in the country, and oh, and just so beautiful. That's how I picture it, and a place that feels like home, that acts as home. And yeah, I don't know, maybe it's because I just visited my parents' home that I grew up in, and I'm feeling particularly nostalgic for my childhood home. I'm not really sure what it is, but I was like, yes, you know, Steventon is the place for me. So yeah, that's it. All right, again, if you want to do this tag, please do it. Otherwise, thank you so much for spending this time with me. I just greatly appreciate it, and I hope you all have a wonderful day. Bye, guys.